In today's world, I don't know about you, but like with a big family and all the crazy things I got going on, and I know other people have going on, you probably have it going on. It's so hard to just stop and slow down and just appreciate being together. Sometimes it feels like it takes a lot of work, but what if it doesn't? Because when you think about it, those are the times we treasure most. So, what if we could just make it happen more often and a lot easier? So that's why I got one of my friends, Abby Turner, with me today, and she's going to show us how we can create this without all the pressure. I'm excited. Abby, I'm so happy you're here today with me hanging out. And I wish you were here in my home. We could just be like having coffee around leaning over the kitchen counter and just hanging out, because that's what you're about. You're like, let's make this whole togetherness real. Let's make it happen. So tell me about that.
Yeah, you know what? I love birthdays, anniversaries, holidays. The big events are so fun. I'm a big theme girl, so I mean, I can go all out for a party. But sometimes I think that it's those, like you said, those little moments, the Tuesdays, the Sunday afternoons, the Friday evenings that really create connection and intimacy between people. And I love the thought that vulnerability breeds vulnerability. I do not believe that we were meant to do life alone. I think that that's why God created man and woman and community. And when Jesus went to heaven, he said, I'm leaving my spirit here and go and create the church. And so in that, it's so how did God do ministry? If we are to imitate Jesus, how did he do that? He did that through meals and the food and the table and hanging out with people day in and day out. Now,
Girl.
Jesus didn't have a big house. He did not have a perfect table. He oftentimes used other people's houses. And in a couple of instances, he brought people and he was like, hey, I don't have food, but I can multiply what you brought. And it's like the ultimate potluck, right? Like, I mean, Jesus was like the creator of the potluck. And so, I think that, Instagram, Pinterest, our culture today kind of says, your dishes better be clean. Your laundry is put up. Your floors, like I could lick them. And it's like, that is not real life.
Yeah.
I love curating perfection on Instagram because that is not real life. But real life is messy. And when we are vulnerable with others, when we bring people into that mess, they open up about their mess and we can create this deeper connection. And that is like what I love about people is that when I open up with you, something in your brain goes, I can open up with you. And
Yeah.
you come back. And it's just, oh, it's so awesome.
It's so good. It's so good. You know what? I'm thinking about this thing that happened. I need to share this with you. I don't even know if I've ever shared this publicly before, but I'll never forget one of my very first conferences. We were having a giveaway. And the giveaway, it was like a drawing, right? And
Yeah.
whoever won got to have dinner at my house. And so, I don't know what they were thinking, but the way she talks about it, she said it shocked her because the woman who won this drawing, she came over to my home. We pulled the piano bench in, sat it by the dining room table because I have 7 kids and they had friends over. So we have all the table. We had to bring in the piano bench. We put another leaf in the table. We added a couple of chairs. We threw food on. There's no spoons and forks that match. Here's a cup, here's a plastic cup, here's a glass mug, like everything. And she was like, oh my gosh, you're so real. And I was like, at first I was like, oh, did you expect something different? Did you expect here's a salad fork and here's a dinner fork and, roll of paper towels, grab me some napkins. And she was like, it was so refreshing. Like, even to this day, she is like very much an integral part in our ministry and what we do, because she's like, this is real.
Right.
And it's so funny because we think, oh my gosh, I'm not ready, or it's not perfect, or it's not like, what are they going to think? It's like, who cares? Like, let's just bring whatever we got, sit around
Yeah.
the table and have fun. I
Right.
love it.
Well, in my cookbook, it's all about spice up your store bought. Take something store bought. I tell people all the time, lean into your grocery stores. Don't try to start from scratch. Don't try to like roast your meat all day, because that takes way too long. And guess what? Kroger, Publix, Sprouts, Whole Foods, like Walmart, they have done it for you. And sometimes it's even better than what you could have done. So like lean into that, add a sauce, bring in some sides, and you've got a dinner in like minutes. And that is like, when I started all of this several years ago, that's how I cook. That's how I've grown up. Cooking is like, I can't start from scratch. And so it was encouraging people, like almost giving people permission to like use store-bought items and ingredients. And they're like, I love that you give me permission, because I would have never thought that I could do that. And it's like, we have been inundated with like this pressure to be perfect. And it's like, no, if dishes are in the sink, come over. If laundry is out, come over, because guess what? I don't have time to put it away.
Oh my word. Okay, Abby, I think I'm in love with you. And I'm pretty sure we're supposed to be together forever and have little hearts. Like we'll be in a heart-shaped frame on our fridge, because you are speaking my language. Like I love preparing meals, but
Yeah.
girl,
I can't even imagine with 7 kids. So I'm saying this and I'm 32 and single, and all I have to do is feed 2 dogs that like barely eat. They're better at portion control than I am. And it's like, I don't have to feed anyone. And I'm like, where are my shortcuts? And you're like, girl, I love shortcuts. I have 7 kids. And I'm like,
girl.
I'm not even on your level.
Oh my word. I don't know. Let's not talk levels, baby. There ain't no levels in the kingdom. You know what I'm saying? There ain't no competition. Like we are all at the table. We're like sitting on the piano bench, pulled up to the table. That's where we are.
Yep.
That's where we are. But no, I love this, because it's like you see what one person is doing and you're like, oh, I can't do that. So I better go grab some Chipotle, or I better go, order some pizza. And there's a sweet spot. I know there's a sweet spot. And Abby, I think you found it for me and for my husband and for anyone who's trying to like create that environment, because it doesn't have to be perfect. No one is sitting around the table and say, wait a minute, I'm pretty sure this roast chicken came from Publix. I don't know if you really roasted that. It's like, you don't want my roast chicken, baby. You want the Publix roast chicken. That's what you want. But it doesn't have to be hard to create an environment where people are just ready to sit at the table, because that's all we want anyway. It's just community. That's what Jesus did. And I love that he would go into people's houses and say, oh, can you feed me today? And by the way, can you feed these 20 people I brought with me too? It's like, can't we just be like ready to go into whatever God calls us to go into, right?
Yeah. And I talk about that in the living table. It's like this posture of obedience, of just putting yourself in a place where you're ready to serve and you're ready to open up your table. And you know what? That starts with cleaning it off. And I am my own worst enemy when it comes to cleaning off the table, because in my small little apartment, that is precious, like holding space. Like that's great space for me to do laundry or for me to work. And I have really had to be thoughtful and mindful about removing that, so that any night of the week, any day for lunch, any time for breakfast, whatever the situation is that I have a place where I can go and I can sit. I love the conversation that Jesus had at the Lord's Supper, or the Last Supper. And he says, I have eagerly waited to eat this meal with you here, not eat any meal with you. He was excited about sitting at this table and eating that meal with his disciples. And don't you think he says that every single day, every meal? I have waited to eat this meal with you at this place. And so, when I see clutter or when I see stuff on my table, I remember that phrase that Jesus said, and I'm like, he's saying that to me right now. And I don't want to stand Jesus up. I want to be at that table and bring people into that moment. And we can start by like removing clutter. So many people say, oh, well, hospitality is a spiritual gift. It's not my spiritual gift. So I'm like wiping my hands of that. I don't have to do it.
No,
I
no, no.
really truly believe it's this discipline. It's a spiritual discipline that draws us closer into who the character of God actually is. And so that we can emulate that. And
Mhm.
in order to emulate that, we have to clear the tape. We have to bring people in, and putting yourselves in kind of that posture of obedience of like, okay, I'm going to serve. I'm ready to serve. Now, how do I serve? And that's where I'm praying the living table comes in as this guide of like, these are some really quick and easy recipes. It has a hosting handbook in it. Like, these are some tips and tricks that I've learned that make hosting, that make hospitality, that make serving others super simple.
Oh my word. Oh my word. I'm so excited about that. That sounds so good to me. I want to touch on something that you mentioned. And I think people who are listening or watching is like, oh, Abby, don't go there. I'm not ready to go there, but I think we have to go there. And it is clutter,
Yeah.
because this is my theory. Okay. But it may not be everyone's theory, but it's my theory. I think we allow clutter as a buffering mechanism to protect us from intimacy.
Yeah.
And I just said
Good.
that. I
That's good.
just said that. Like, I think it's a way to say, well, I'd love to host, or I'd love to have a Bible study in my home, or I'd love to bring people in, but I just can't right now. But I will in the fall.
Yeah.
I will when the kids go back to school. I will when summer's finally here.
Yep.
I will when I finally get that kid off to college. Like, no, you won't, because you ain't done it yet. Like, what is today?
Right.
And in the Bible, it says like to do is today, without the procrastination, without the excuses, without the stumbling. It's just take
Mhm.
action today,
Yeah.
because we really have to look at why we have unintentionally. It's not like we're like, I'm going to consciously create this environment so I'm protecting myself. It's
Right.
all subconscious. It's all unintentional. We're just like, I have a buffering mechanism. I don't have to right now. And that's okay. I have a reason, which is actually just excuse. And so, what can we do today to say, I'm just going to give myself, even if it's just for me,
Yeah.
give myself a little space? I
Yeah.
remember this one woman, she enrolled in Mom Master University, and clutter, she considered herself a hoarder. She couldn't even get around her home. And she said within the first 12 weeks inside Mom Master University, she was able to declutter her entire home. But get this, Abby, she now has a weekly women's Bible study in her home.
Love
That
it.
would have never happened had it not been for her deciding, you know what, enough's enough.
Yeah. Well, and for me, my like, being single, it's always like, well, I'm going to wait for my husband. I'm going to wait for the table. I'm going to wait for the home. I'm going to wait until like I'm ready. And maybe 7 years ago, I was like so lonely. I was living in Birmingham, Alabama alone. And I was like, Mom, I'm giving up, throw my hands up. I'm moving in with you. And I'm just going to be like Miss Haversham, the young version. And she was like, no, Abby, invite someone over and have dinner with them. And I was like, Mom, I have a drop leaf table that literally seats one. Like, there's no two at this table. And she was like, no, Abby, you can do it. I said, well, I'm just going to order Domino's or Tzatziki's. And she was like, no, Abby, you need to make a meal. Well, the meal was terrible, but the intimacy that we bonded. And it was like, wow, that one person went back to work the next day and she was like, oh my gosh, Abby made this bomb meal. And I was like, yeah, it like blew up in our face. Like, it was so bad. It was not like good. It was so bad. And she was like, no, 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 it was so good. The conversation, her home is so cute. It was like 400 square, and that's an exaggeration. It was probably like 600 or 700 square feet, but it's tiny. I was like, no, nobody is ever coming back into my apartment again. And the next week we had two, and the next week we had four, and then it multiplied. And then we
Great.
ended up having a Bible study. And it's like, because I decided to take that one step and say, okay, if Jesus could have a meal with somebody, I can too. Let me make a meal. Let me invite someone in. Let me sit at the table. Let me form a connection. And then it became connection turned into intimacy. Intimacy turned into this Bible study. And then we grew together as the church, as the community. And it was like, wow, I have seen the table work in like some really cool ways. So now I just want everyone to experience it because it can be so good. Just like your friend, or the girl you talked about, like, decluttering, having the space to mentally say, okay, I'm going to bring someone in. It doesn't have to be a group. It doesn't have to be a huge Friendsgiving. It can be like a Tuesday night, little bitty, like, hey, bring your favorite app and we're just going to eat, or whatnot. Like, it doesn't have to be big. And then forming those connections, building that community, because community is meant to be like edifying, encouraging, and building you up. But we can also come into that space and be broken and be encouraged and be built up. So anyway, I love the table because I've seen just the miracles that can happen there.
And can I just call out something? This whole thing happened because you listened to your mama. Like, can I just say, like, come on, let's just call it how it is, baby. You listen to your
Yes.
mama. Like what she says, you did it. And so I love that. And that the table is so representative of so much in our life. It can be representative of clutter, busy, too much, distraction, or it can be representative of opportunity, intimacy, companionship. I love that it's just a table. Whatever you make it mean is the impact it has in your life. And you've made
it doesn't necessarily have to be the table. It could be the kitchen counter. It could be the coffee table. But it's like this symbol of coming together. There is a psychologist that talks about like the brain. I'm not a psychologist or a brain person, so I don't know. I'm not a neurologist.
So I love all that stuff.
Okay. So anyway, he was talking about how shoulder to shoulder, our brain shuts down, but face to face, our brain opens and wants to connect. And that's why the table is so important, is because we're sitting across from each other and our brains kind of like open up and say, hey, be vulnerable, talk to this person, be open. But side to side, if we're sitting like at a bar top or something like that, like you always want to open up and talk, because that's how our brains work. That's how God designed us to be. And it's like, yes, sit at that table, open up, let your brains kind of connect and bring people in.
Which is why you also have so many fights when you're on the road. That is not scientifically founded. I'm sorry. I just had to bring that up. But there is something beautiful about sitting across from someone. Like my husband and I, whenever we go out for date night, we'll see people like sitting side by side, and that's cute. But we're like, no, I want to see you. I want to like be up in your face,
Right.
And so I love that. Like that's our time. There's always important when the kids were growing up, that I don't care whether it was a bowl of soup. I mean, girl, I can't tell you how many nights it was beans and rice, potato, beans and rice, spaghetti, like whatever's cheap.
Right.
But we're around the table, sometimes for like 2 and 3 hours, laughing our butts off and just enjoying intimacy and connecting. And even going back, those are the moments that I treasure the most. Like when nothing big, nothing like, oh, it's a birthday, oh, it's a graduation. It's just us saying, I want to be with you.
Right. And I, it's those little moments. I like to call them micro moments of life, because they're the small moments that you can overlook, that you can pass by if you allow yourself to be distracted. So being intentional with those little moments really causes us to stop and slow down and appreciate the blessing that the Lord puts in our life, whether that's community or family or children or friend. Like it's a blessing, but we've got to slow down and take time to really absorb that and allow that community, whether it's your family, your friends, your kids, to encourage and edify and fill your cup.
So good. Well, so let's bring this home, because I love like what we do here at Crazy Bless is we talk about how crazy this amazing blessing is that God allows us to live. But how do we bring it home? Let's say we're not quite there yet. We doubt, even the thought of like opening up our home or just having our whole family like, hey, sit down at the table together is challenging to us. What would be the first step? Like, let's give something where people are like, all right, today, like whoever's watching or listening, today I can do this. What could they do?
Okay, so I know that I said that I believe hospitality is this like spiritual discipline, just like running a marathon. And what's the first thing you do when you start to run a marathon? You've got to get the equipment. You've got to prep your mind. This is the plan. This is the course I'm going to run. Maybe this was the shoes, the Garmin. I don't run, so I'm not sure, but great analogy. And so you're going to buy the shoes or you're going to buy the Garmin. So what does that mean? Clear off the table. Clear it off. Very simple. But put yourself, like I said, in that posture of obedience to prepare for the next step. The next step would be set a designated time that you're going to sit down at the table. If it's overwhelming to do dinner, breakfast is super easy because you can just do like a bowl of cereal or scramble some eggs, or Jimmy Dean has some great breakfast sandwiches. You can even DoorDash Chick-fil-A if that's what you're feeling. Okay.
So speaking my language now.
Right. But sit at the table. It doesn't have to be some beautiful meal. It just needs to be about connection and about that intentional conversation between your people. And so step one, clear off the table, buy the Garmin watch or the tennis shoes, figure out your plan. Step two is set a designated time, just like you do when you're going to go run or you're going to go train for something. You're going to say, this is when I'm going to go run. I'm going to do it in the morning or the afternoon or the evening. Okay, when are we going to have a meal together? Once a week. Don't try to go ham and go like 27 meals a week. Like we're not trying to do everything all at once. We're taking baby steps. We're taking small steps one at a time. And the last thing, I know I said it, lean into your grocery store. They've got a lot of really great things. And we need to, like, the rotisserie chicken is now being pulled off of the chicken. None of us should be buying rotisserie chickens all done. We need to be buying the chicken already pulled off because it's done for you, right? So lean into your grocery store. So clear off that table, set a designated time, and then lean into your grocery store to say, okay, how am I going to make this meal come to life?
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay. So let's just make a commitment for everyone who's watching, listening. Let's just make a commitment, even like she said, just this week, one day this week. And I remember when the kids were little, they were all doing soccer. They were everywhere. It was rare that we were even home, for more than like 2 nights a week. So what we would do is I would have a blanket that I kept in the car, and we would just go by the grocery store and pick up like fruit and some sandwich stuff and just have a picnic. But we're there, we're sitting together, we're enjoying. So it doesn't have to look like anything but what you want it to look like. But let's set a day and let's start this thing called community, especially like coming out of this time when we have to distance ourselves. I think we all realize I need people. Like I need intimacy. I need connectivity. So let's celebrate that. I love that. Abby, you've given us such amazing ideas. You've given us inspiration. And I love that your driving force is to be like Jesus in the world. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you. This has been such a fun conversation. I'm so passionate, as you can probably hear in all of my like high-pitched, very fast words. I'm like, I love it. But really, I hope that the living table is this guide to how to be hospitable, how to serve others, but not only on how to serve others, but how to serve your family, how to get to the table, how to experience Jesus in a different way. Because when he was on earth, he did his ministry around table and around food. And I believe that he still wants to do his ministry in us through the table and through food. I believe wholeheartedly that food is Jesus's love language. So get to the table, make food, and invite Jesus.
I love it. I love it so much. So make sure you pick up a copy of Living Table. And also, we're going to have that linked up in our show notes. So do not miss this. What a great opportunity to not only enjoy the love language of food, but also enjoy the people that God has allowed us to go through life with. You do that, you plug into that living table, you are going to be blessed like crazy.